Hey, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So what we want to do here is make sure that when we load the page, the right stuff is selected here, depending on depending on what the user selected originally. Okay, so to fix this issue, we have to go to our plugin, which is user rows, and we need to add one more model. So let's go to the main plugin here and look at the table. It's the user rows map. That's the table we need to deal with. So let's create a model for it. So we say make model user rows, and what do we call it? User rows map. Okay, so enter. Now this one is different because it doesn't have a plural there, so we have to go in and edit a few things. So here is user rows map over here, but it's not maps, so let's just remove that S there. Everything else remains the same. Let's see, user rows map in the table. Let's grab this. So I want to paste these column names, and here as well. Let's remove this. Let me copy these guys as well to here, pretty much the same. Okay, I think that does it. Pretty much we don't need any validation here either, so I'm just gonna delete everything from there. You could even just delete the entire functions if you want. Okay, so with that in mind, let's go back to our plugin here. And down here where we are listing things, this is in the main content. Yeah, we have this user row thingy here, but wait a minute. Okay, so let's do this in the after query here so that we see how this works as well. So what's going to happen here is, if result is empty, we just return data. Okay, so let's see what's inside data here. So I'm going to do this and put data over here, like so. And what I want to do is go where we are viewing the list is right here, and we get all rows. Limited by number 30. I think with rows here it's better to just put 100 or something. I don't think there will ever be a time when you reach that number, or 1,000, just so all rows are seen on one page. And the next thing is, I want us to create one of these. So I'm going to bring it here. So instead of user row, this one is going to be user, let's call it row map, like this. So this is okay, but this one is user rows map. Okay. Actually, we don't need it here. Where we need it is over here inside this. So I'm going to create it here and paste. It's never good to instantiate classes within loops unless it's absolutely necessary. So what I want to do is, when I'm reading from these rows, when I say get all, I want to give these guys a query ID. So I'll do this, and I'm going to say, now this one is a static value. So we're going to do it like this, query ID, like so, and then is equal to, the query ID is just a string. I'm going to call it get rows, like that. That's what I'll call it. So let me see what, after the query, what I get down here, so I can work with it. So if I refresh, this is what I get here. So if you see here, there is no query ID. So this is how I identify my specific query that I want to deal with. So no query ID here, no query ID there either, none there, not here, not there, none. Okay, so it seems the query ID is never actually saved here at all. Okay, so it says cannot access private property query ID. Okay, so that's where the issue is. So let's go back to our database.php here. This shouldn't be private at all. I don't know why I named it like that. It should be public static, like so. So that's in the main database class there. So if I now refresh, I shouldn't have any problems anymore. Let's see which one of these has a query ID, and there it is. It says get rows. So this is the query I am looking for at the moment. It's got human resource and admin. So that's the correct one. But if you notice, any that come next after that do not have that query ID. This is how we can identify the particular query that we want. So here we'll say, let's put an if statement first of all. Let's see. So here we'll say if data query ID is equal to get rows. This is when we swing into action. Wait, is this an array or what? This is an array. So an array query ID. Okay, I see. So it has to be like this. So data query ID is equal to that. But if data is empty, we shouldn't even reach here. Let's do this here. And do that. And then move these guys in and up. Okay, so if query ID is equal to get rows, then we instantiate that and we do this. So here we should only see one of these results, and there it is, just one, which matches the query ID. Okay, so what we want to do is loop through these arrays and then grab, using the map, which ones map to that one. So for each here, a result, there is a key and a row. So for each row here, I'm going to say, let's do row map. In fact, let's just say permissions. That's what we want to get here. Permissions is equal to, inside this row map, we're going to grab, using the where clause. So what we are looking for here is, let's see, is the ID. If I come back here, let's go to row permissions. Okay, so it's not even the map that we have to deal with, it's the permissions page, because it's got a row ID and what permissions are allowed there. So wrong thing that we've instantiated here. In any case, that's fine. So I just need to instantiate this one. No. The permissions one, where is it? It's right here. Yes, that's the one. So I'm going to put that one here. This other one I had written here will work in the user's manager plugin to associate a user with a row. So anyway, we get this. What have I done? What have I done? Okay, something like this. So in the where clause, what we want is to look for a specific row and get all the permissions that have that one. So this is row ID, where row ID is equal to, and same we say row ID, like that. Then if we get a result from this, if we get a result here, then all we have to do is look at the original data. So we're going to say data result key, that particular key, because we want to edit the result array itself with that key is equal to, and there's a row here. So that row I'm going to say I'm going to add another item there because that's an object. I'm going to say permissions is equal to permissions. Now the result of this is an array of objects, right? So I'm going to use array column. Do I need to use array column here, or I can just save this as it is? Debate. I think let's use array column, and then so that we just have one array instead of an array of objects, and then the key is permission, like that. Okay, so in order to see what we have done here, I shall move this down to the end here, right before we return that, so that you see what we've added on top of this. We should have an extra thingy here. If I now refresh, wait, why is it doing this? Oh, I see. Let me move it a step back up to there. Okay, so that we get one, we got all of them. So this one has permissions. So we've added permissions to this row, and this is the list of permissions that the human resource has, and admin has only one, which is all. So all we have to do now is compare which ones of those are in that list and then tick them here. So this has worked, the after query. So every time we query, we just check which query ID, and then we grab some extra information. Cool. So now I can go to list.php here, and once I come here, this is where I am looping to go through to create the checkboxes. So all I need to do here is just ask in array. We'll do this. We'll say PHP echo in array, so that if this is true, we can do something. The needle we're looking for is the permission, that's the perm. Now, in the haystack, which one is the haystack? The haystack is the current row permissions. Now, it's possible this may not exist, so let's do double question and then put an empty array like that as the default. So if this is true, if in array, then let's put a question mark now for this part, and if it's in the array, let's echo checked, like that. If it's not, let's echo some emptiness. Okay, so there we go, like that. Boom, boom. Okay. So let's try that out. Just by doing that, we should have ticks where they are supposed to be. And as you can see, they are correct like that. So if I go back to users and come back to user roles, then it can tell me which ones of these the admin has and the human resource has. Okay, so that solves the problem there. Straight and simple. So if I want to add, for example, human resource can delete a user, I can save like this. And if I go out of this and come back, they remain having that permission. Alrighty then. So as you can see, the human resource does not see these rows here at all. So if I go back here now, we want to make sure that we give rows, specific rows to these users over here. Okay. Only one has a row of admin here, but it's not showing here because we haven't enabled it. This is where our mapping inside user rows, this user rows map class will come in. Now it doesn't belong in this particular plugin, but we can leave it there. However, we can make a copy of this. Let me open the folder. Let's make a copy of user rows map. Go to plugins, and I want to go to the users manager models and paste it there. That way we have a copy there too. So let's open the users manager plugin here and look at that. There it is. So we need to change the namespace. I'm going to copy that and paste it here, so it's now inside the users manager. Okay, so users rows map table. Let's make sure this is included in the... Oh, there's no need for that. Okay, so that's great. We should have that table for things to work. So what I'll do now is go to the list view. This is inside the users manager. There's this table called rows here, which is over here in the emptiness here. So this is supposed to just list the rows that the user has. So imagine if not empty row rows like that. So we imagine those rows could exist. So let's put an if statement to ask the question if they exist or not. Let's duplicate this, duplicate, because if they exist, we want to run a loop. So I'm going to change that to for each. And then rows as row, like that. So each row here will be listed. Now I will put a div so that the listing goes all the way like so, and then I will put a row here. Now better to escape this just in case. It's got some weird code there, so let's refresh. Nothing changes as expected. So we need to do the after query thing and try to add rows to the row that are existing, the rows that are existing. So let's go to our plugin.php. This is in the users manager. And let's go down here to after query. So exactly like what we did in the other one. Where is that plugin? We can have a query like here, where we say we are listing people, 30 of them. So let's add a query ID like that. So user query ID is equal to get users. Okay, so now we just need to look out for that particular one. So if data query ID is equal to get users. Okay, then we know this is the correct place, like so. Okay, so get users, that's where we loop through, and now we try to get, so most of that stuff we can copy from the previous thing. So let's go to user rows here. There's a plugin.php and after query. So this part here is copyable. We can copy that. We need this user thing, no? Do we? Probably not. Okay, I'll paste this here. But here I'll say role map is equal to new users manager. So the one we need is this user rows map. Like so. Okay, so that's the one we're going to be using here. So instead of permissions here, let's change that to row. Okay, so we are using row map. So rows is equal to row map where. So let's look at that table that has the mapping of rows. So this one tells you which user has which row. So I just want to grab each row that has a specific user ID. So I want to return every column with a specific user ID, and disabled should be equal to 0. That's one thing I forgot on the other one as well. So here I forgot to check for disabled. So I'm gonna do this. Disabled should be equal to 0. So make sure of that. Come back here and let's add disabled here as well. All right, and we are looking for a specific user ID. Oops. So where the user ID is equal to row ID, that's great, and disabled is 0. So then those rows, let's see, array column. Okay, this is a bit of a situation here. Now the reason this is a situation is because we're going to be getting the row ID is just the ID. It's not the name of the row. So we need to actually combine this with the user rows table. The results of this we put in the user row table and grab the row name itself. Okay. So what I will do here is this. Instead of using the where clause here, let's just use the query function. And this I can leave as it is, but let's make a query. So we will say select all from, I'll just put user rows. Now you can use variables instead, but I want this to be shorter, so I'll just use them directly like this. From user row where. Now you can use a join here instead. Join those two tables and then grab the row ID. That could be, but instead what I'll do is I'll read from here, then the result of that row ID, I'll get an ID from here. Okay, so here we'll say where ID in, and then let's now select row ID from the other table. The other table is this one, user rows map. Okay, this query is getting long, so what I'll do is I will cut it from here and put query instead. All right. So we are selecting from here first, row ID from that, where, don't forget disabled is equal to 0, and so disabled is equal to 0, and user ID is very specific. So and user ID is equal to user ID, like that. Okay, so that user ID is this one here we're grabbing. And select all from user rows where ID in, yeah, and also here disabled must be equal to 0 and a specific ID. Okay, so that will run here. If that is true, instead of permission, we want to grab the row column like that. Okay, so let's just refresh and see if anything changes. Nothing has changed. So rows. So let's try and see what rows has. What result did we get? So we got emptiness both times. So something wrong with our query. Okay, so let's see. It's possible to check what's wrong by just saying row map error. Let's see what error was saved there. So I'm gonna say DD, like that. So let's check out the errors. So it says invalid parameter number of bound variables do not match number of tokens. Okay, so what always that means is that here we have more items than we have here. So since we're already using disabled is equal to 0, there's no reason to put it here. This is the only variable we have in the query, and it should remain as such. So if I now refresh, there are no more errors, and you can see this one has a row of admin. So let me remove this part here, like so, and that does it. So that's the full query over there, just in case. Alrighty then. So let's get back and let's refresh. So you can tell this one now is an admin. Let's go back to the list view itself, users manager, where it's dealing with rows. The row here, I can use UC first, but it doesn't matter. I like these to be italics. So let me put an I tag and a closing I tag there. Let's refresh. There we go. Admin. Okay, so let's add rows. Let's be able to add rows to specific users now. So if I go to edit here, I want to be able to add user rows. Now, all I need is just a drop down like this to get some rows. Then I can select which one to add to the user. So in that situation, let me close all files here. Let me close this and that. Okay, so in order for that to happen in the users manager, we need to go to, let's say, edit, for example, and let's just create the UI for now. So I'll duplicate the agenda and change that to 12 so it goes all the way through. And here, oh, actually I can't do this because I need to be able to tick several of these. So what I need to do is copy from the user rows list view here, this part where we loop through these guys, right? So I can grab this whole thing here, copy, I can close that, and let me come here now and let's put paste. Now since here we're just selecting, maybe we may need what am I going to call this one? This one will be called row. Now this one will be hard to deal with. Okay, let me just remove that like so. Okay, so this there, okay. Now we're not putting permissions here, of course. Now if I go back to refresh here, this is what I will see. See that? So what I want to do is, let me put a border here, and then within this thing I'll put a label and say rows, like that. Let's refresh, and there it is. So rows, there we go. Now we can actually select what rows this user can deal with. Now these are not rows, of course. These are permissions, but we need rows instead. So what we need to do on the edit here, let's go to the plugin, and where we are loading that edit, this is inside the main content. This is where we load the edit. We only need that here and there. So within these guys, what we do, we need this user row class, because that's the one that is attached to this. So we say user row is equal to new, and in this case we are in the, wait a second, oh, that's the wrong place actually, right? Sorry about that. Let me just confirm. It's easy to get confused because we have plugin.php named all of these. I'm dealing with the users manager here. So the user row.php does not exist here. So we can grab it from there if we want to and make a copy of it here. So let me open this folder that has user row in here, and I'll copy that, go back between plugins, and I'm going to the users manager models and paste it here. Okay, so now that I've added it here, I need to give it the right namespace, which is users manager, like that. Okay, so that grabs from the users row. And once I'm done with that, let me close this. I want to go to the plugin.php here, and in the view, which is right here, that's where we want to instantiate that. So on this one, on the add and the edit, let me put some spacing here, put that here like so. So here I can say user row is equal to new users manager. Are we in the right plugin? Yes. And user row, like that. Alrighty then. So if I now go to the edit here, I can get the right stuff here. So instead of perms here, I'll select that perm and change it to row, like that. Okay, this doesn't make much sense, but where else is this? Rows, like that. Okay, so it's not going to be rows like, oh yeah, actually, because we are grabbing it from here, so it is very possible. So what I want to do is use this instead. So say user row, that's the class, and then we would do a where clause. We want to grab So we use a where clause or a query. So the question here is, let me come back here. If we go to user rows, there's just the rows here. So we need to use the map here to know which rows belong to which user. So we will use the query function instead. Like that. Okay, so in here we'll select from we'll start by selecting the map. So we select each row based on the user ID. So select from user rows map, where user ID is equal to user ID, like that, and disabled should be equal to 0. Okay, something like this. Let's put a semicolon at the end. Let's encase this in some brackets because we want the result of this to create another query. Now instead of or here, we want row ID, like that. Okay, so once we have that row ID, then we will do select again, or this time from user rows where ID in there. So we also need the disabled here and ID in there. Okay, so then we run the query, but we need the user ID. So user ID is equal to row ID, like that. Let's move this in. Okay, so if rows is correct, then this is what we get here. So let me check it out and see if it actually shows us the rows, but it does not. Let's put some padding here, maybe 2. Okay, much better. Okay, so why do we have nothing here? Let's see if we have any errors. So I'm going to copy that and do this and say error. So let's check that out. So there is no error, which is weird. So let's grab rows and see if there are any results actually. So no results, no errors. So we're just trying to read the wrong data, I guess. There is row here, right? So, oh, so my bad. We want all the user rows. We don't want to limit to a specific ID. So user rows. Yeah, so this is my bad. So we're just supposed to do select all from user rows where disabled is equal to 0, and that should be it actually. So, and there we go. Okay, so we should have had 2 results here. Yeah, the reason is because we added this. Okay. Okay. We have an error there, I guess. Okay, so rows, which means I think we got some results there. Rows by row. Now, here, row. Yeah, I think I know where the issue is, because this is an object like that. Row ID, num row value, row. So we'll fix this in a minute. For now, let's just go with it. So let's refresh, and there we go. So now we have rows admin and human resource. Okay, at least we have those two, and then we can select which one this user will have to use. All right, that's great. But for now, they are not ticked to show which ones are already selected. So that's one thing we have to fix. We'll fix that in a minute. But here we don't actually need this num here, but I'll leave it there for now. So the name of this should be, what should be the name? The name should be, oh yeah, we need these to be unique actually. So this one should be row underscore like that, and then row ID, that's okay, and then that number. And then the value should be the row ID, like so. Okay. Alrighty then. Yep, I think that pretty much does it. So let me refresh to make sure there are no errors. So I'll put this exactly in the add section as well. So I'll copy these. This is in the edit. Let's go to the add view here. Where did we put this though? It's after gender. So right after gender here. Paste. Let's move things back a little bit. Okay, something like so. Now in here we don't have a row like this, so we can't have to check for any that are ticked. So let's just remove that like so. And what about row ID here? Yeah, that this should be num actually. Let's remove this. It's just one record, so we don't need two numbers. So there we go. Yep. Let me go back to that edit part as well. Do the same thing. Here, instead of row ID, we'll just put num. So I'm just going to remove this like so. Okay, that solves the problem. So if I click refresh, should be no errors. Click back. And if I click add user, I should see at least the rows that exist right now. Okay, now we just need to add some code to actually save these rows into the mapping table, which is this one, user rows map here. Alright guys, so far so good, and I will see you in the next video.